oof. You know,
No,
that's a what was Jokic's first year?
it wasn't anything special. I saw him his rookie
Really?
year. It was probably just off the top of my head, probably like 11 points, 6 rebounds.
Well, so you know, there's always the difference in professional leagues too. So when he comes overseas, there's going to be a lot of different things. I think he'll do fine. I think he'll probably be like one of those like mid 20 point range guys every night, and he's going to have some. He will have games where he probably scores 13, and then he'll have other games where he scores like 41, and that's going to be through the regular season. Could San Antonio easily make the Western Conference playoffs next year? 100%. Like they're at least a play-in tournament game. 100%. But is he a guy that's going to be like you said, like a 30, a 32, 15, and 12 guy, like right off the bat? I don't know. And the only reason I say that is because part of it is like the psychology of like moving from across the ocean. Now you have a bunch of American money. You also come from France and wherever you were living in France to San Antonio, Texas, which is like maybe the most American city of all time. You're going to have some things that you're learning along the way that aren't basketball related, and he's going to have to adjust in many different ways. So that first year, he might have to lay off the throttle a little bit. It's going to be quite an adjustment change for him.
Yeah, I realistically, I do think his stat line's gonna look more like 24, 6, and 7, something like that. I
What do you
mean,
think what do you think he'll struggle with the most? Scoring, rebounding, or just like just
he's gonna
operating the
get
offense?
bodied for
You
sure.
think?
In Yeah, I think he's gonna get bodied. Like you talked about how he gained size at you said like his primary school or whatever.
Yeah,
Um
whatever they call like high schools or
yeah,
learning communities,
got
whatever.
it. Yeah, it's just yeah, he's gonna be crafty finishing around the basket, but like I don't know, like they're gonna try to rough him up a little bit because the game's never really seen somebody as mobile as he is at 7'4", and he is like, um, even though he has gained size, he's still pretty dang lanky, and to try to fill out that build is a complete. It's just impossible. Like you can't completely fill out that build. I mean, like Yao Ming did, but it's not. It wouldn't look the same on Wembanyama if he tried to do it. But yeah, I don't know. I think he's going to get roughed up around the hoop.
So, Josh, you kind of have experience with the whole bulking up thing too, because when I first met you, I don't know how much you weighed, but I would guess that you've gained probably 30 pounds since I've met you in a good way. And maybe you could tell us, like, I noticed, like, just from seeing you in high school, I watched one of his games when he played against Minden. And then
Oh
some of
yeah,
your
you were
highlights
there.
on Huddle. Yeah. So you were more of, let's say, the JJ Redick shooter type in high school, where I think
Mhm.
now when you play basketball, you take it to the hoop a lot more. How important is putting on that extra weight in terms of like getting down into the paint and playing defense too and not being pushed
Right,
around?
right. It. I don't know how else to explain it other than it's the missing half of a lot of people's game. I do think if Brandon Ingram were to have a Giannis type body transformation, he would take his game to the next level. It's the missing piece that some of these guys never figure out. Like, take when I met you, I weighed when I was at Coast, I was like 175, and now I'm 210, 212. And yeah, like I'm not claiming to be as good as I was when I was 19 when I played all the time, but I do recognize that it is a lot easier to get to the hoop now because
Mm-hmm.
basketball players they're not normally like strong, and the stereotype is basketball players are forced to lift, and they kind of just go through the motions for sure. Like once you get that love for lifting and getting stronger and bigger, then I think that's definitely the missing half to a lot of these guys, their game. So yeah,
Well, I'll tell you this too, as someone like my bachelor's degree was in exercise science, so I was able to like
yeah,
study that stuff. You got to remember, Victor Wembanyama is 19 years old. Like Josh, you're 21, 22, 23. I don't know.
23 in 10 days.
Yeah, there you go. So you're closer to your finished development than Victor Wembanyama is.
Yeah, true.
Obviously, comparing you two is like a crazy way to do this, but comparatively, like for you, you can easily put on weight, one, because of your height ratio comparative to where you are, caloric intake, metabolic rate, resting, all this other stuff, da 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 da, blah blah. But Wembanyama, the biggest factor is that he's 19 years old. Like in 7 years from now, when he's in year 7 in the league, he will be 26, and his body will basically be to where he will be developed. Now he can do other
Yep.
things to gain muscle mass and do other things through weightlifting and nutrition and stuff, but his natural weight will not actually probably show up for another 5 or 6 years at minimum. So he might have a LeBron James type of tenure where LeBron was so physical those first couple of years and just had no shot at all, where he could go outside and he'd hit the random three every once in a while, and he would go to his mid range and it'd brick off the side. Now LeBron uses his physicality as a way to be able to move off, but he can still shoot the three. He's able to be more agile. Wembanyama might have the opposite, where he's going to be this wing shooter, a perimeter defender that can defend any position. He'll get bullied and bodied around in the paint by bigger, more physical players, but he'll use his height and his reach to his advantage. But then once he fills out, if he fills out, maybe his career then changes and he becomes a more thick center, and he becomes and brings
Right.
back the traditional five piece. I mean, it could be one of these careers that we see maybe 2 or 3 phases of.
Right. No, you're definitely right about that. Like coming into the league, yeah, like I said earlier, Giannis when he came into the league, I mean, he was skinny.
Those
So I mean,
photos of
like
him are nuts, just so
it's it
different.
bro looks malnourished. So the fact that he got a few years under his belt, had just like a crazy body transformation over the summer, and then like proceeded to put up like all-star numbers right after that. He wasn't really like he was putting up solid numbers, but it wasn't anything super special before he implemented that into his game. So I mean, that definitely might be one of the things Wibanyama may need to focus on. But like I wouldn't be too concerned about it if I'm him, because he's just like I do agree with all the experts. I do think he's probably the best prospect to um, come into the game since James, for sure. I don't know if he's going to be better than James. I don't know where ceiling is, but it's kind of crazy. It's going to be tough for him to put on a lot of muscle with his build, but yeah, it'll be interesting to watch.
And to me, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what he will look like as an NBA player and what his career will look like, because we've never really seen someone like him before. You get those ESPN memes where every year in the draft, they give a player comparison for every single draft candidate of this is the next Kevin Durant, this is the next Carmelo Anthony. But it's really hard to say because we don't really have an archetype for a 7'4", 7'3" guy that is primarily perimeter oriented. I mean, you could maybe look at Kristaps Porzingis, but I don't really think it's the same thing.
Yeah. And I think we can all agree, though, at least, that Wembanyama going to the Spurs is the best case scenario for his career. Like there was
Oh
no
yeah,
doubt. Like if Pop is his coach for 1 year or for 5 years or for however long he's got Pop, they are going to be contenders right away, and his development will be the best because he's going to San Antonio.
yeah.
Agreed. And you
It,
could also
it,
talk about, oh, you go ahead.
no, no, go for it. You got it.
Oh, I was going to say San Antonio also has a history of taking foreign players, and they do a great job. You can talk about Tony Parker from France, Manu Ginobili, Argentina. Who was the other guy? Was it Boris Diaw who was from there? He
No,
was another
LeBron
foreign
Stopper,
player.
Boris Diaw.
Yeah. But I think it's the best place he could have gone. And to me, I think the NBA probably may have rigged that a little bit just so he goes there. And honestly, I'm happy about it.
If they wanted to rig
Yeah.
it, they put him in Chicago. That's my stance. That's how I.
Yeah, yeah. And not to mention, I work with a guy that's the biggest Spurs fan I think I've ever met, and he's showed me that their future they have like 6 future first round draft picks, and they have I think they were top 3 in the most cap space available in I don't know if it, yeah, current cap space available. I do think they're going to be able to build around Wembanyama, and they will be a realistic threat in the West within the next 2-3 years. So I'm excited to see how that pans out.
So, generic question. Obviously, we're not GMs. We're not anything like we know the salary caps and all the, money and all that sort of stuff. But if you're the Spurs, are there any, because to me, everyone's saying Wembanyama is worth that he is, and if you go back and you look through like any of the articles that they talked about with James, and they said like here's what a trade package for LeBron James would be at the one overall pick. If you're the Spurs, let's just say two players. What are the two players you would have to get in any form of trade to give up the number one overall pick and the rights to Victor Wembanyama? Because to me, they have to be young. You got to have two guys that are under 27, and they're two guys that have to win now. So for me, unfortunately, Josh, one of them has to be Jason Tatum. You have to get Jason Tatum somehow. And then I don't know who, maybe Doncic. Like that's the only other person that I could think of. Like,
I think you're right. That's probably where my mind would go to. I'm kind of drawing a blank right now. I really don't know.
but I think that's a good thing then, because then it should be even more of a slam dunk, because the Spurs are like the Patriots of the NBA, right? They're always like doing development stuff. They're always
Sure.
like the unsung hero of like developing people and making sure that they get the most out of anyone's career and doing all this other stuff, right? They're loyal to a fault. They've got guys that are great Spurs, but not great other players, other places. But they recognize though, and it shouldn't even be a comment. No one should ever bring it up in San Antonio. But there's no one in the league right now that's worth trading that number one overall pick. I think no matter what we disagree on with Victor Wembanyama right now in his future career, we all agree you have to take him number one, and there's no other deal.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I really do like that Spurs Patriots comparison. That was spot on.
And you see it with a lot of these big trades too. In order to trade for Wembanyama, a team would have to give up basically all of their assets. So there's really not a feasible trade package that you could offer to anyone that they would accept.
And I had read from the Athletic that Shams had talked to a GM, and they said even if Wembanyama doesn't play his first 3 years, teams are willing to still sign him to a max contract after not playing for 3 years. That's how big of a deal he is. I don't think people
Crazy.
understand in this era of everybody has a highlight tape and everybody's got like a dunk reel that Victor Wembanyama is a player that we have not seen since LeBron James, and there's a reason he's being hyped up that way. And it's because NBA GMs are like valuing him in a way that's so different than any other player.